Yeah, I stopped my whole Telegram. Yeah, sure, you can.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? This is Sawcruhteez Streamz, and I am your host, Tyler Coates. Today I'm going to be joined by the lovely Daisy Komen, who I was just visiting over the last week or so. We've got a lot of fun stuff to cover. So before letting you introduce yourself, just wanted to mention for anybody that hasn't been around on Twitter lately, it has been a while since I've been on YouTube, but did want to make sure to let everybody know right off the top that I have now doxed my real name as part of publishing the Hyperwave book. So this will be still Sawcruhteez Streamz moving forward, but now I will be the host, Tyler Coates. So very exciting stuff. And how are you doing, Daisy? Thanks for joining.
Yeah, I'm good, Tyler. Yeah, so I've been calling you Tyler for how long already? Like, I guess since Bali. So sometimes it's even hard to not say your name when people are around. Hey Tyler, how are you doing? It's the first time I can say this on YouTube. I'm doing great. I'm in the city of Rotterdam right now. I'm actually at the office where you also were last week. We're hanging out here. We had such a great time. And, yeah, I'm doing well. I have to kind of detox from you being here for a week. We'll get into that.
Well, it looks like you're off to a good start.
Yeah,
I saw
I'm
you.
great to be on the stream with you. There's so much to talk about. Also, not only the phone yet, but I guess everybody wants you to look at the price also. Yeah, the fun talk first, right?
Absolutely. There will be plenty of stuff to talk about. There's been a lot of action since I was able to last do an update. Actually, while I was visiting Daisy, we tried multiple times to set up a stream from my laptop, and that was a complete failure every time we tried. So we tried our best, but did not succeed. And yeah, it looks like you're off to a good start detoxing, having a glass of wine with us this evening. So that's a great start.
You know, after this one, I'm gonna be sober for a long time. But I just want to cheer on you.
Well,
all the good times we had.
Cheers. I wish I was joining you, but it is a little too early for me.
You do TA. Lucky enough, I don't have to.
Yeah.
By the way, we're just seeing things rocket in the back, so we all hope Bitcoin's gonna go up from here, right? That's why I put it in the back.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, so before diving into some charts, like I said, we'll have plenty to talk about. But before diving in, did want to do my usual trip report and share the excellent trip that I just got back from. I've got a handful of pictures that wanted to share from Vegas and from Europe. So if you are mainly interested in the TA and you're not tuning in live, probably be best to just go ahead and skip forward about 10-15 minutes because I do enjoy taking a moment to share kind of a little bit about the trip after returning from a prolonged time away. Let's see if I can figure out the best place to put this. That looks good there.
Vegas was awesome.
Yeah, Vegas was too much fun, and there we go.
Shout out to Tone Base for organizing such a great conference.
Absolutely. Shout out to Tone, who took down the poker tournament wearing his shitcoin minimalist hat. Very good look for the man who put everything together, and it was absolutely an incredible event. So big thank you to Tone for putting that on. Shout out to anybody who I met there. I got to meet a bunch of great people. Anytime you're anytime at least I'm at a Bitcoin conference, I'm generally making some good connections and meeting some really great people, and this was definitely no different. Also got to teach the Advanced Consensio workshop. It was sold out and even a little bit more so. We had to squeeze a couple people in, so that was really great. Went really, really well. Had a great material prepared and was able to get through it in the time that was allocated, so that was really good. Got a lot of really good feedback, and Daisy was even sitting in for that. So
like I've been to a lot of workshops, and this one was just amazing. And I mean, a lot of people came up to you, but also a lot of people came up to me because they know your friends, right? And just telling me how they got so much out of it, and literally gave them new view on the market, and also more security for like more. They felt like more balanced to keep on trading or changing their style to a more balanced style. And it wasn't only about Consensio; it was also about risk reward. You had to trimming, where to put stop losses. It was the whole package. It was just great. And you made me do an XRP analysis. You said, who's a Bitcoin maximalist here, right? So it's just awful. I think I did okay.
Yep, you certainly did. So that was really cool.
The workshop was great. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that.
The blackjack. Yeah.
After we got done with the workshop, it was time to enjoy ourselves, and we certainly didn't waste any time there. So we had a really good time with Daisy and Leah and Joe Saz and some others. Got to show Daisy and Leah around the strip for the first time. We went to the Bellagio. Daisy ended up winning some money at the blackjack tables, and here she is cashing out, looking like she just made out like a bandit. So that was really cool. I love that face, that look. And here's Leah enjoying a cigar with Joe and I. Peter Todd was there in the back, so we had a great time having some cocktails there at the Bellagio, smoking cigars, and yes, that was really a great part of the trip. And then from there, got to fly straight to Austria, where I went on a ski trip, and that was just an absolutely incredible time. Some of the best snow that absolutely the best snow I've ever experienced, combined with the best terrain. Was just an unbelievable time getting to stand up at the top of these mountains. And then I really like this picture because you can see this ski track way over here, kind of off to the side, and that's where we ended up going all the way over to the side of the mountain. Then we get to this area where it's like a straight drop down. That was a little scary, but definitely a lot of fun. And then also got to be a guest on Ivan's show. So that was the last time I provided any analysis, was on Ivan on Tech's podcast. Still actually very, very relevant what we talked about there. So anybody that didn't see that, did leave a link here. That went really, really well. And then from there, I really got quite the treat to take a private jet from Austria to Belgium, where I had just an incredible time. I was getting a hard time about my neck pillow there, bringing it on the private jet, but I wasn't leaving that behind. I had to made plenty of use of that after that flight, that's for sure. Here we are enjoying the inside. Got to ride around in some sweet cars while I was there, and also crossed 10,000 followers. So that was quite the treat, and really was a very memorable experience. And then I got to go visit Daisy after that. So we just had an incredible time doing all my favorite things. We took bikes around the city. We got to go to museums, dance to live music, ate some excellent food, and had our fair share of drinks, all of my favorite things. So tell us a little bit about the fun that we had while I'm scrolling through these pictures.
Good on the bike. I told you multiple times I was proud of you as a Dutch person. So,
that's right. I was crushing it on that bike. Had my scarf. I mean, it was freezing cold, but it didn't stop us from getting down there and riding around, like really getting the full Dutch experience. And then I got to go to some really nice bars and get some nice cocktails as well.
This is on the rooftop. Yeah, that was nice.
That was real nice. Here was a great dinner of some real traditional seafood. We had lobsters and scallops and clams and shrimp, and I mean, just some of the best seafood I've ever had. That was truly a really nice dinner.
Yeah, locally caught, all the local Dutch shellfish and fish. Yeah. Shout out to David.
Shout out to David. Hope everything's good. Great to see you. Here's a picture from where we were listening to some music at an Irish pub. This was definitely one of the highlights for me. Getting to experience a good old traditional pub and hearing some really good music. That's about as good as it gets as far as I'm concerned. What'd you think about all that, Daisy?
Yeah, I saw how you reacted to the band and the music in the Irish pub, and you had such a great time. You couldn't sit still. You were completely taken over by the music. Yeah, it was an amazing week. We did the pictures maybe show half what we actually did, because we also went to the Rijksmuseum, and you saw the Night Watch by Rembrandt from Rijn. You saw Van Gogh. You've also seen a lot of cultural stuff this week. bicycling around the Dutch Amsterdam canals, over the bridges, and we had some Dutch food. It was also great to show you around. I'm very proud of my country. I live in Rotterdam, but I've used to live in Amsterdam, so I'm just proud to show you around. And it was so nice welcoming you. We had so much fun. I'm glad you made it back home safe. In your usual place where you do your life. It's sort of funny to see you back there, because we were hanging out every day for like 6 days. So
yeah, it's sure great to be back, and I really do appreciate you showing me around. I can tell why you love where you live so much and have so much pride in your country. That is definitely a special place that I hope to be visiting again sooner rather than later. So the final cherry on top for the trip was finding out that the Hyperwave book had been published and is ready for sale. So here's the cover of that. That is what prompted me to come out with my real name. I'm very, very proud of the book that we put together, and definitely wanted to put my name on that, as I do think it could be relevant for years and years to come, and am really excited about having that available. So anybody that is interested, it is available on Amazon, and Amazon isn't shipping to a couple countries, and if that's the case, it can be bought directly through the publisher, Archaway Publishing. So very exciting stuff, and that about covers everything. So with all of that being said, it's probably about time to go ahead and get into some charts. Anything else you wanted to mention?
Yeah, I bet I cannot wait for your TA, because you remember we were watching the chart in the last evening when we were drinking margaritas, and Ethereum was up, and we were like all happy, and I said, what if it just makes a bar here and it just drops down, and then you're like, oh no, that wouldn't be good. And then literally you took off with the plane from Amsterdam and the complete thing crashed. So I was thinking about you, and I could see you were offline. I'm like, oh fuck. But I know you got your stop losses in, but it's crazy how Bitcoin moves when you're on a plane every time. People can actually make bets on you being on planes, I think. But that's all I have to say. Let people have you do your TA. I'll just be watching.
All right. Well, yeah, I'm trying to figure out the best way to put both of our photos here so we're not blocking up everything.
I'll try to see on my live stream on my phone.
So yeah, definitely there were a number of reasons why I was quite bullish before this last sell-off. So we can definitely dive into some of that. But before covering that, let's go ahead and just take a look at the number one most important factor for me right now. And that's something I've been talking a fair bit about recently, specifically since finding this indicator, which is the Bitcoin log growth curves indicator, and that can be pulled up on TradingView for free. And if you put it on a log chart on a higher time frame, the weekly is preferred, you can see how unbelievably important this has been. This area of support has illustrated sort of the S curve of adoption, where you start out with volatility being much higher. At the beginning of an S-curve, you have much bigger volatility that occurs in much shorter amount of time, and as the adoption spreads, the volatility gets less. The moves from the bottom to the top of the parabolas get less significant in terms of percentage, not in terms of dollar amount, and it takes longer to get there. So you will be getting smaller amplitudes that take longer duration, and that will kind of start to come to a head where you really get less and less and less volatility as adoption spreads. So that's what this illustrates, and it does a tremendous job of illustrating support and resistance with the bottom of this, what I'll call a channel, and the top of the channel, and then the median. The bottom has illustrated major bottoms dating back to 2012, and the top has been illustrating these major tops. And the median has done an excellent job of being support and resistance in between. So this is just an absolutely critical area for me. Couldn't be any more important of a crossroads as far as I'm concerned. If we can find support above this trend line, then we are going to be absolutely in a prime position to take off into the next parabolic move. As you can see, when we test the trend line, kind of take off, come back and test, that's when we really take off, is when this holds and fails to break down, and then you take off. So here we held, now it's coming back. Is it going to break down? Is it going to hold as support again? I firmly expect it to hold as support. When you have a long-term established area of support, you should be confident that it will hold until it doesn't. It's very possible that this is going to break down tonight, but until I get enough information that tells me this is broken down, I'm going to be highly confident that it is going to hold. Every time that we've gotten down here in the past, it has been very scary, and it looked like there were a lot of reasons why we would keep going down further, and every time we managed to find support on this trend line. This most recent move down to the mid 6,000s at the end of 2019 perfectly found support from this trend line, and was one of the major reasons why I had become so bullish down in this area. And now what we're seeing is a test of this trend line as we speak. Right now this is getting tested, and if it can start kind of going sideways, kind of give us some of these dojis that maintains above, then it's going to be looking really, really good. If it does break down below 7,000, things are going to start to get very, very scary as far as I'm concerned. So this is a situation where not only are we testing critical support from this trend line, but we also have a very, very important horizontal that can be drawn using basically the close back in October of 2017, taking that straight across. And we notice that this has been an important boundary on a number of occasions. And if we can, and it should basically reinforce the support from this trend line. Not only will people be viewing this trend line as major support, but I also expect people to be viewing this horizontal trend line as a major area of support. And if we can manage to stay here, stay above 75 over the next couple weeks, then we are going to be in a really good position to go ahead and make a big move up to this median in the months to come. If you support the bottom of a channel, then the target becomes a median. So right here we support the bottom, rejected the median. When you reject the median, the target becomes the bottom. So as long as we can keep supporting the bottom, we should then be in a prime position to send it back to the median at a minimum, and I would actually be expecting a return to the top based on the proximity to the halving and what we've seen in the year or two following prior halvings. So as long as we can maintain support above this 7,500 area, and this is what I was talking about on Ivan on Tech, that this is an area where I feel highly confident that we support here, and that's what I will continue to expect. But if I'm proven wrong, I know exactly where that will be, and that would be on a breakdown of these levels right here. And if that happens, everything changes for me. So that is the most important level that I'm looking at now. Any thoughts there, Daisy? Any questions?
Yeah, kind of the same question where people also ask you about hyperwave, about breaking very, very critical levels. Would you be that pessimistic after just a wick through 7,000, but a weekly close which is higher? Do you need to have the weekly close below 7,000? If it only wicks, would you still be nervous? If it ends like a weekly doji above 7K?
Great question. And I would say the level is actually 75, not just 7. So if we are to wick below 75 and close above, creating some sort of doji, some sort of reversal candle with a big wick below and a close above, that would actually make me feel very, very good. It would be a strong indication to me that that the move below 75 was a shakeout, and that now it's in a really good position position to go ahead and continue higher, being unable to maintain those lower prices. So a wick below this area and a close above on a weekly basis would be a very, very strong sign to me. And even if we do get a weekly close below 75, I'm still going to wait and see kind of how it reacts. One close below this multi-year trend line wouldn't quite be enough for me to completely say that it's invalidated. There still could be some traps that occur in this area that make it look like it's violated when it isn't really. So what I will really look for if we do close below 75 is to then turn that area into resistance. So if we spend some time below 75, say a couple weeks, now everything is changing, and I'm going to have to take all of that into account. As it stands, I am going to be on high guard for some traps that occur at these areas, and will be mostly thinking that it would be a good sign to get a nice wick below and a close above.
Mm-hmm. Good answer.
And
you want to say anything about if you will be bullish if it holds the line? Did you want to say anything about the risk reward? Because you always keep risk reward in the back of your mind, the percentage of loss that you would have on a trade and the potential reward, because that, to me, that looks very good when I look at it.
Absolutely, and another great question, and definitely what should be on the forefront of everybody's mind right now, at least as far as I'm concerned, is not is this going to hold or is it going to break down, but instead, what is the risk reward of a position here? And as far as I'm concerned, the risk reward at this level is as good as it's ever really going to get. What we're looking at, what I said, is on a minimum, if we find support here, then I would expect a return to the median of the channel. And it would depend how long it took us to get there. The longer it takes, the higher that would be. If it takes, the longer it takes, the more that progresses up. So the median, it's hard to tell exactly where that would come in. So I'd use a conservative, like it'd be hard to get there this quick. So this would be a conservative target for me around 16,000. Yep. Is that? Yeah, 16,193. And the risk, I would say, is a conservative way to measure risk would be below the December low of 62. I would expect to get out of a long position before. I wouldn't want to hold on to it all the way down to that area. I think there would be good enough reason to exit before getting all the way down to 62, but that again would be a good conservative area for a stop loss to be. And if we look at that setup, we're somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 1 on a risk reward, and that's as conservative as we can possibly be. If we wanted to be a little more aggressive, we could say that it's going to take longer to get there, giving us a higher target, giving us a little better risk reward. Or we could say that our target is actually the top of this channel, which gives a risk reward unlike anything you'll ever really see. But again, I wouldn't be using that myself, because the target isn't the top of the channel until you actually break through the median. So yeah, I think that right here, the risk reward on a long is better than anything, as good as anything you'll ever get. When you test this trend line, it's a situation where you can exit quickly upon a breakdown. Price doesn't have to move very far for your position to be wrong and for you therefore to have to execute a stop. But if you're right, then there is a ton of room to the upside. So in terms of building a position for the next 1 to 2 years at these levels, it seems like a very, very good opportunity. But the problem is that we need to take into account not only risk reward, but also trend. And I'm not buying this level, even though it is such a good risk reward and how important risk reward is to me. What is equally as important, or roughly as important, is betting with the trend. And Bitcoin is no longer in a bull trend based on how I measure it. Now let's walk through why I say that. Okay. Let's see, am I going to be able to...
I can see, like, let me see if it looks good. Maybe there's some sound connected. Try to mute it.
Everything looking good?
Oh, and I can also see the live chat. Oh,
great. Yeah, let me know.
Cesar, thank you. Cesar's watching.
Ah.
Shout out to Cesar. We love you.
Yep. Shout out to Zazo and Fibbo Swanee. Appreciate you tuning in. Dolphin134, always good to see you.
I'll try to keep an eye on the live chat when you're doing it today.
Yep, perfect. Okay, so I said the trend is no longer bullish, and let's take a look at the reason why. First, we got a death cross with the 50 and 200 EMAs on the 4-hour chart. That is the first sign to me that the trend is changing. Next thing I will look at is the weekly parabolic SAR. That just broke down this week. I was really hoping for support to be found above that. Did not happen. Final.
Yes. Oh, that's bad.
Yeah, it's bad.
Oh, I didn't even notice. Oh, God. Yeah, okay.
And then we've got a fully bearish Ichimoku cloud as of yesterday's close. We had the bearish TK cross, re-entered the cloud, bearish Kumo twist, and a close below the cloud. So we've got the EMAs on the 4-hour bearish, the weekly SAR is bearish, the daily Ichimoku cloud is bearish. So this is a full-on bear trend as far as I'm concerned. One last thing that I would look at, and I need to get an extra EMA up here, is the 4 and the 9 week EMA. Oh, jeez Louise, what happened here? 4 and the 9 week EMA are also a very powerful trend following metric for me. Covered this in depth in the Consensio class recently. Is a great way to identify entries here, exits here, entry here, and then the exit came in here. So I was really hoping for this recent pullback to support before it led to all of these moving average crossovers and SAR breakdowns and Ichimoku cloud reversals. So as it stands, I am definitely expecting support to hold, but I'm not trying to catch a falling knife. Instead, I'm going to simply wait for confirmation before I will be looking to buy. So that I will be looking for risk reward to be in my favor and strike rate. So that I'll be still, if I wait for this trend to turn bullish, I would only need it to get back up to maybe 87 or so for the trend to start to turn back bullish for me. And the little amount that I would miss out on here will affect my risk reward and maybe make it 9-to-1 instead of 10-to-1, but the amount that it increases my strike rate will much more than make up for that little bit that I cost myself in risk reward. So always very important to be thinking about risk reward and strike rate. The best risk reward opportunities will come with the worst strike rate. In these types of situations where you're trying to catch a falling knife, the risk reward is generally going to be great and the strike rate is generally going to be not so good. So I try to combine those as much as I can. So not only that log trend line that I wanted to show, but also the curve trend line, but also this angular trend line that is coming in right in here. So I wanted to make sure to cover that before I forget. So big area of support, but it's too early to be buying it as far as I'm concerned because the trend is fully bearish and the trend is my friend. As simple as that. Okay, quick drink of water. Let me know if you see any good questions.
I was listening to you, so I think
I definitely agree with Al Cubes. Says Daisy must wear a hoodie too. Next time we'll have to line that up.
Okay. So notice I was wearing headphones all week, and you kept on surprising me.
That's right.
Oh, not when you're but when we didn't see each other, and I was still listening to music before we met, you were like in front of me, scared the hell. Daisy, can you ask Sawcruhteez what he thinks? Well, you have to say Tyler now, right? Oh, Sawcruhteez. What he thinks of testing the 1000 hyperwave line. Tyler thought it could reach it someday. Oh, so he said Saw and Tyler in one sentence. Well, yeah, your view on the 1000 line.
Yeah, great question, and something that I talked about with Ivan recently. It's pretty much as simple as this. As long as we're above that trend line, I think that it's about about 15% chance or less that we ever go to 1,000, probably 10% or less that we ever go to 1,000, as long as we support above the adoption curve trend line, and which is at about 7,500 right now. I feel very confident that we will not go back to 1,000. But that being said, I also know where I would be wrong and would have to really start to change that analysis, and that is if we break down that log curve trend line, the most likely outcome from there would be a return to 1,000. And it's something that is hard to even consider at this point right now, but that's how important that this area of support is to me. If we break that down, I've got nothing else to give me a target other than hyperwave. That would be the most important target by far for me right now. The adoption curve trend line is the most important, and if that breaks down, then by far the most important would be hyperwave, and I would be saying it's probably like 75–80%, maybe even more, that we go to 1,000. So that's really why this is so critical to me. It's basically the difference of this being the absolute bottom and never seeing these prices again, or really entering into some sort of prolonged bear market that Bitcoin has never seen before.
Yeah, I'm getting some complaints about my audio. You know actually in which room I am right now, and it says they're saying it's echoing. You know, it's the back room of my office.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do about it. I don't know what to do.
Do
So
you have
I guess
headphones?
you just have to live with it.
Do you have any headphones?
I can check. Maybe. Let me just. Let me check.
All right. If you do, that may help. If not, then people, I guess, will just have to live with it.
I'll just have to speak up, and you have to listen to me being in an aquarium. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not a professional YouTuber. Yes, I'm from Holland. I'm from Rotterdam. I do not live in a can.
Right, so just one other kind of area of support to illustrate would be using a parabolic curve on Bitcoin, connecting kind of the down around 300, around when the move it started in 2016, connecting that to the low in December of 2018, and then to these most recent lows, December of 2019, and today we can start to illustrate a pretty darn nice parabola. And this would be a pretty reasonable rate for this to go ahead and progress. Sometimes you get parabolas that are so steep that it just wouldn't even make sense for that to be sustainable long term, whereas this really does. That would be a really nice sort of parabola on the linear chart. And then what we can kind of notice is if this does find support right here, we may be looking at some sort of big W.
No headphone. No headphone, sorry.
All right. No big deal. I think you sound fine. Hopefully it's not a problem. So here's what I'd be looking at. If we can find support around this area right here, what would be perfect for me is to get some sort of big W like this, where if we can get some sort of rounding bottom in here, maybe some sort of Wyckoff or something along those lines that dances along this trend line, basically something like we saw right in here. Then what this would do is allow the trends to start to kind of turn back bullish right in here, and I would start to get some buy signals right here, which this is the perfect setup for me, where you get a what is a falling knife that comes into support. And like I said, I don't buy that because it's betting against the trend. I wait for the trend to reverse in my favor, and here we would get a very similar price right up in here. It would definitely be a little bit worse, but it would be very similar, kind of like we saw down in here. I was very bullish and covering shorts, but I wasn't longing yet, and then I longed once the trend turned bullish right in here. So if we could get something like this where it consolidates sideways for a couple weeks and stays above this trend line, then it would allow the moving averages to do, you know, something like that, where you get a bullish cross with the moving averages, and then potentially break the SAR and reverse the Ichimoku cloud, all that sort of stuff. Right in here would just be absolutely perfect. It would be a little weird with the proximity to the halving, but that's something that I'll be watching very close for. When you get a double bottom or a higher low off of a trend line, then a big W is something that I pay very close attention to, and it is a great way to get entered in near the trend line after the trend reverses, and allows me to maximize on risk reward as well as strike rate.
Let me just, I have to run to get my adapter for my laptop, and me speaking up works. That's what the live chat says. Some people are posting charts about halving already being priced in. Also, it's related to many things. Even Google searches on buy Bitcoin. It was, there's many charts saying that Bitcoin pricing already, the halving is already priced in. Do you have any opinion about that? Did you even research that? Or?
Yeah, that's basically been on the forefront of my mind for the last 6 months or so, and basically that's exactly what I want to hear. If we are going into a halving and nobody thinks that it's priced in, and everybody is extremely confident in a halving pump, then that's a situation where I start to get really concerned. Whereas when a lot of people are talking about the halving being priced in already, then that's, to me, just a good sign from just kind of an emotional analysis perspective. I don't want a trade that I'm in to be too obvious, and it seems like having pump should be too obvious, and that it can't keep following this. It can't keep doing this time and time again, and it's the same thing kind of with the support, whereas I expect it to happen until it doesn't. And I know that the halving is not priced in. I feel like I know that with a very high degree of confidence. That being said, I don't know that the price is going to respond accordingly. Just because the stock to flow ratio demands a higher USD price for Bitcoin doesn't mean that the market's going to react accordingly. Like, for sure, the halving is not priced in as far as I'm concerned. And I'm trying to find a chart. But the question is the market going to react accordingly? Maybe, maybe not. So a great, one of the best follows on Twitter is at 100 trillion USD. His name is Plan B, and he tweets a bunch of these stock to flow ratios, which illustrate very clearly that a halving has not been priced in. And you can go through his charts. I highly recommend going through his charts as much as possible, and paying very close attention to the stock to flow ratio models that he posts, because that's the reason why a halving should lead to an increase in Bitcoin's valuation. It's the stock to flow ratio. It's nothing else. And the stock to flow ratio is going to get much better after this next halving. And therefore, the USD valuation should respond accordingly. And here's a great illustration of this chart where halving occurs. The red dots are the price of Bitcoin. Halving occurs when you get this straight line up in the stock to flow model, and you see that price will be pretty close to the stock to flow valuation before the halving, and then when it halves, the price takes a while to catch up. Here we're very close to the stock to flow model before it halvings, and then it halves overnight, and the price can't respond accordingly overnight. It takes time, and that's when we get these parabolic moves. And then once the price gets above the valuation, here's where it's priced in. Right here's where it's equal to the stock to flow valuation. So here's where it's priced in, and here's where it gets overvalued when it gets over that. So here we see it gets priced in, then gets overvalued, comes back to below the valuation, and then gets about equal to prior to the halving. This is the pattern that it's followed time and time again. Here we get equal where it is priced in. Took a long time and a big move for that to happen. And then it gets above, gets overvalued, comes down, gets below, gets undervalued based on stock to flow, and then it gets very, very close right near the halving. So that is exactly what I'm expecting, is for the decrease in the supply and the improvement in the stock to flow ratio to lead to a environment where the stock to flow ratio improves overnight, but it takes a year or two for the price to respond accordingly. And by the time it does, it gets overvalued. Here we would see that it would be priced in close to 100,000, about 90K or so is where the next halving would get priced in. And if it gets above that, that's where it becomes overvalued, and a return to below that valuation would be to be expected. So this is just one of the many great charts that he shares.
I have to look into that. Yeah.
It's yeah, really a good, probably the best follow. He really has drilled down some of the fundamentals behind Bitcoin's value proposition, and has a very deep understanding of how the stock to flow model will or should affect the valuation, providing that you know, that something fundamental doesn't change, like the whole network gets hacked or something like that. So here is another article that I just clicked on. It looks like it's in Chinese. Oh well. So yeah, I have a very high degree of confidence that the this is about where the halving got priced in for the 2016 halving. For the last halving, we saw it get priced in around 7K. So that has been priced in now. The next halving definitely hasn't, as far as I'm concerned. Whether or not it will definitely go up, that is remains to be seen. So great question. Thank you very much. One other thing to keep an eye on is this potential really big symmetrical triangle that has been forming. As a matter of fact, probably be a good idea to set some alerts on those trend lines. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right.
Interesting, because it does have 3 hits on each side, which is the minimum. Which I learned from Tom.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, it is definitely an interesting setup that I think warrants some close consideration. And when
that's huge. What is that target? Probably the 100K valuation, right?
Not quite, but it would be close, as long as it's to the upside. Hopefully it's not a
maybe
target.
try the percentage-wise over the price-wise. Maybe you'll get there.
Yep. Okay.
Sometimes you just want the chart to do what you think it has to do. Right? Just kidding.
Okay, so what I'm going to do here is just set a couple alerts, because I definitely want to know if we close above or below this symmetrical triangle. So I just highlight that, click the alert icon, BTC crossing trend line once per bar close. It's on the weekly, perfect. So now I will get an alert if this triangle confirms, and we can take a look at the measured move. We would do price range. So it would be about a $16,000 measured move. And if it breaks to the upside, that would be about $25,000 target. It would be a target to at least return to prior all-time highs. If it breaks to the upside, if it breaks to the downside, it would be such a significant move that it would be well below zero that, as Daisy mentioned, we would need to use a percentage instead of the actual dollar amount. So it would be about an 84% target. Now that is going to line up with 1,000.
About 1,000, right?
Yeah.
That's 1,000. Is that 1,000?
I think that is. Yeah, it is. Look at that.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Wow. Well, so this is the moment.
This is the moment.
We're almost at the tip of the triumph. Wow. That is. Did you ever realize this time?
No, I did not realize that this triangle would line up with
It's
1,000, but
very interesting.
that is very interesting, and yeah, that would be good confirmation for what I was already saying, that if we break this down, the target would be drastic. And what's probably going to happen, what Bitcoin loves to do in these sorts of environments, is keep us on the edge of our seat for as long as possible. So watch for it to continue to consolidate between here and kind of drive us crazy, which actually would be a pretty sweet setup, because if we could do that, now we're kind of starting to reverse the trend. If we're supporting above this and breaking out of this trend line, that would be, like I was talking about earlier, here's where the time to buy would be, around 88, 9,000. That would just be absolutely a beautiful setup. So definitely something to continue keeping an eye on. And all right, we'll leave those there. One other thing that I wanted to cover real quick before moving on was a really neat indicator that was just shared in the Telegram chat group. It was Magic who shared a Bitcoin mining cost calculator. And I'm going to have to definitely do some more research just to see how it's being calculated and that sort of thing. Let me get it pulled up here 1 second. But I'm very, very intrigued by what I'm seeing. And it does line up with what I've kind of what I'm remembering historically is as we were getting down in here, a lot of people were talking about the cost of mining a Bitcoin, and a lot of people were estimating it to be around these levels. So I definitely remember that being a big topic of discussion back here towards the end of December. I don't really hear anybody talking about it now, which is interesting. And so the reason I have to give this some validity is because it lines up with what we were estimating back in here. Not we, but the market was talking a lot about it, people that know more than I do. And also back in here, people were talking a lot about Bitcoin costs to mine being around 3,000 to 4,000. So it's lining up very closely with what I've seen over the last year or so as the best estimations. And here we are testing it right now. After supporting very nicely the last 3 times it tested, perfectly supported, and here we are kind of wicking off from it now. So that will definitely be something to keep an eye on, and could be a primary, could also be another confluence of support on that log curve trend line. Is not only is it the adoption curve trend line, also it's the horizontal. And if also this mining cost is something that people are paying close attention to and betting heavy when it gets near that, then that could be another major sign that this is a big area of support. Again, I haven't looked into this at all. I'm just intrigued because of how closely it lines up with what I've seen estimated in the past from people who know more than I do. So any comment there?
Yeah, well, I see some people who say, let's honor Tyler James. If you go to 1,000, let's honor him. And then I see some people saying, what's going to happen if we're at 1,000? Because of course, yeah, I guess nobody knows. But you can tell people what usually happens when a hyperwave returns back to normal.
Yeah, so much.
You've seen hundreds, and I think people do not want to know. But
well, yeah, so that's yeah, some good topics there, and absolutely, if we return to 1,000, there will be no shortage of people honoring Tyler. I'm sure of that, and thinking about the how much flack he took for the predictions that he was making, just based on what he was seeing, would be a really neat way to remember Tyler. If we do return to 1,000, I'm sure that myself and many others will be taking our hats off to the late and great Tyler Jenks. And one thing that he was very adamant about is that hyperwave makes no predictions for after a hyperwave is complete. After returning to phase one, price can do anything and everything, and hyperwave makes no predictions about what can happen. And as Daisy mentioned, I've seen hundreds of hyperwaves that have completed, and basically the most common is prolonged consolidation sideways. It's very common after you return to phase one to just go sideways for a long time, and that would be brutal for sure. There are assets, General Electric is coming to mind, that have entered back-to-back hyperwaves. They return to phase one, and then they consolidate sideways, and then they enter a new hyperwave that is much bigger than the last. So that is an option. Or you could enter some sort of parabolic advance that has nothing to do with hyperwave. That is another option. I've seen a handful of those examples, and I can't think of any off the top of my head, but there are some good ones that take off in massive parabolas after returning to phase one, and without really going sideways for very long. So if we did return to 1,000, then that would complete the hyperwave, and there wouldn't be any more predictions from that theory moving forward. And yeah, it would be nothing that I'm hoping for, that's for sure. But I will be prepared to trade it either way. So yeah, if it does move to 1,000, that'd be a huge move, and there'd be a lot of money to be made from the short side. And even if it doesn't take off in a big way from there, there'd probably be a big bounce that would offer a chance to make a lot of money. So not being married to this needing to go in one direction will be a great way to make sure that I'm not missing out on opportunities to make some money.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, good answer. So I have some people asking about traditional markets, but I think you should go like to maybe Ethereum chart first. You were also watching the big W on that, right? How's that going?
Absolutely, big time. And it was going a lot better until recently.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not sure if I'll have time to dive into traditional markets today. I would love to. I might just have to do a show tomorrow or later this week.
Right.
We'll see.
I mean, but yeah, like everybody's. There's a lot happening, but I do understand that it's already been going for almost an hour, and you have only covered Bitcoin till now. So, person in the live chat, I did mention it, so he might do another show on it. You hear that? Maybe go through some altcoins.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and take a look at a very important chart, a very, very important chart right now for me, and that is BTC.D. This is the Bitcoin market cap dominance. Question is, did this trend line break down or did it hold? Originally, as I had it drawn, it looked like it was broken down because I was using this close and this low. So originally, I was viewing this trend line as being broken down with a potential throwback to resist it, which would be a strong sign that alts are going to rally against Bitcoin. And that is something that I pay very, very close attention to because I trade alts against Bitcoin. And when alts are bullish, I want to be long, and when they're bearish, I want to be short. So I've been shorting alts against Bitcoin for over a year now, closer to 2 years, and now I am wondering if it's time to get on the other side of that trade, and have been keeping a very close eye on this. And now the question becomes, can we adjust this down? I think we can. If we adjust this down a little bit, we can see that we still have all these touch points with no closes below. And here, wick below, close above. So now I am very, very interested in this chart and very interested in this kind of 66.5 level. If we can break back above 67.25, it would be a strong sign to me that the trend line is still intact and that it is time to continue shorting alts against BTC for the foreseeable future. If we struggle around this area and fail to get back around above 67.25, then it will tell me this trend line did break down and a major reversal is in the works. So let's just get up some moving averages, I guess, before I switch. Let's take a look at the weekly. So we did get a cross on the weekly, and we can see the weekly has been a great way to kind of illustrate these big moves, getting you, here's a big W right here where you see the second high or low, you get crossover here, keeps you in all the way up until the top, gets you back in down around here. And when I say in, that would be short alts against BTC. And then here, when it crosses over, that gets you out. And now it'll be interesting to see if we get this crossover by this trend line. We can see when it's crossed over by this trend line, it's been a great signal. So that's definitely something I will be keeping a close eye on. Let's take a look at the 4-hour. Notice the bounce into that 200 EMA, perfect rejection. Now we're kind of getting squeezed in between the 50 and 200 week EMAs. If we can really continue to support this trend line and lead to a golden cross with these EMAs, it would be a huge sign for Bitcoin, and my target would literally be like back above 90% dominance. Golden cross would be enormous.
Yeah. Squeezing. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. So this is telling me volatility is imminent. When you get a squeeze with the moving averages, big moves follow. If it's a golden cross that occurs, then it should be a big move to the upside. If we fail to get a golden cross and then it leads to breaking down this trend line, strong indication of continuation, and I would be really expecting a return back down to 37 to retest the lows. So not only is this an absolutely critical time for Bitcoin against US dollar, it's also an absolutely critical time for alts against Bitcoin. And what we see here is the moving averages on the 4-hour crossing in a beautiful fashion with the price very near the moving averages, following higher high, higher low. So that's looking really strong on the 4-hour. Let's take a quick look at the daily cloud. We have re-entered the cloud. We got a bullish Kumo twist. So we can see reversal seems to be in the works. We walk through these steps time and time again for how I determine trend. First step is the moving average crossovers on the 4-hour. Next, we look for the Ichimoku cloud, which it needs a bullish TK cross, re-enter cloud, bullish Kumo twist, and then exit cloud. We're getting close to those last couple steps, so this is very close to turning bullish. Let's take a look at the weekly SAR. Still a little ways to go. Being that we broke this one here, if we didn't break this here, it would be very close. Like when you break a SAR, it resets it to like a higher level. If we would have stopped right here, it would be really close and would be breaking down in here. So I don't like when that happens because it causes for this to react a little bit slower. So it will take a little bit of time. So as we see, this hasn't reversed the trend to bullish after testing this trend line, but it is getting close and it started to show the first signs. So keep that in mind for Bitcoin. If we are to reverse from this critical area of support, we will need to see very specific steps. We'll need to see moving average crossover on the 4-hour. We'll need to see a parabolic SAR breakthrough. We'll need to see moving average crossover on the weekly. We'll need to see daily cloud reverse. Until we get confirmation, we don't want to be overly confident in one direction or the other. This is an absolutely critical crossroads. Anything can happen, and we need to be prepared for anything to happen. If we're married to our position that Bitcoin has to go up before the halving, or that Bitcoin has to rally against alts, we're going to miss out on huge opportunities. And I realize that a lot of people out there, you're in this because you love Bitcoin and you want to hold Bitcoin and make a lot of money long term, and that's great. But for me, I'm in this because I love Bitcoin, but what I like even more is volatility. And I really don't care if the price is going up or down. I want the price to be going in a certain direction, and the price is getting ready to make a big move one way or the other, and that tells me
yeah, you just showed us.
that tells me there's going to be big opportunities on the table to profit, as long as I am prepared and ready to, knowing what I'm waiting for, and then ready to execute when that happens. So if Bitcoin goes to 1,000, I absolutely do not want that to happen. But if it does, I'm probably going to make a lot of money. That's my expectation, anyways. So exactly. So that's what I want people to be thinking about, is if you're really, really married to Bitcoin going up, or you're really worried about your position, kind of getting nervous about your exposure or anything along those lines, it's time to really reevaluate where you're at, because this is a situation where being overexposed is a very bad idea as far as I'm concerned. When the market is primed for big volatility, the people that are overexposed are the ones that are going to get either liquidated or hurt really bad when that volatility occurs. So being flexible and being prepared to go in either direction is what is going to give me a big edge, I believe, over these next few months. And if there's anything that you get out of today's show, it would be to do your best to not be attached to assets. Don't be emotionally attached, but always be engaged. Very, very, very important. So Ethereum, and this is all.
People asking about it.
Yeah, let's go ahead and take a look. So alt's absolutely critical spot against the price of Bitcoin, and when there's an alt season or like an alt bear market, big moves happen, and there's a lot of opportunity there. So we've been paying close attention to this big W on the Ethereum chart. It's been getting me rather excited about the potential of a return to the $800 levels, and haven't been making that call because this hasn't confirmed. We need a confirmation to occur with price above 370 before the target would become the top of the big W. So as it stands right now, this is in a really, really nice setup for a big W to occur, but that pattern isn't confirmed until you break above this right here, the horizontal of that middle part of the W. So as far as I'm concerned, this is still looking really, really nice, but it is in danger of breaking down. What we need right now is a higher low on the weekly. Basically, if we were to, do this, we're not going to go straight up for the most part. In general, it would be, like that. So this is definitely isn't invalidating the big W as it stands, and actually looks rather bullish with a big move and then a pullback that could be forming some sort of bull flag. And when we had this big rally on the weekly, we created a higher high, but we still needed a higher low. We couldn't just expect, straight green candles all the way. So now we're in a prime position to form a higher low. And as long as this doesn't retrace fully, if this retraced all the way back down to these lows around 140, now things are really starting to change. But right here, it's looking pretty darn sweet for a sort of a bull flag. Let's see if we can find a good example right here, where, let's see here. And this was one that I posted about in real time on TradingView, I believe. Yeah, on TradingView, it was this nice sort of, parabolic move that really took off. And then we got a sharp correction that scared a lot of people. Let's see here. And put us in big danger of reversing. Let's see. Oh, that's upside down. I'm good at that. Just pulling up a fib to see how much it retraced. So we noticed that it retraced. Did I just draw? Yeah, good. To the 0.618 after this big move off of the lows, retraced to 6.18. And then it actually went on to form a ascending triangle. So I wasn't looking at the right thing. I wasn't on TradingView at that time, so I didn't post that on TradingView, but I did absolutely trade that one. So that is looking very similar to this as far as I'm concerned. And let's take a fib. And we see the 0.68 comes in around 182. So as long as...
That's when everybody gets really scared.
Exactly right.
The perfect buying point.
Exactly right. So yeah, I think that this recent action is going to be a potential higher low on the weekly. That's the most likely most likely outcome as far as I'm concerned. We have this major horizontal, and we've got a higher high on the weekly, breaking through horizontal, now throwing back to retest that for support. Makes a whole heck of a lot of sense. And then if it does form a higher low, using that to draw in a new trend line is exactly what I would be doing. I think that the big W is still looking really, really good. I can't remember ever seeing a better one, to be honest. It really looks nice, and this recent action hasn't done anything to invalidate it as far as I'm concerned. As long as we are maintaining above the 0.618 retracement, I think things are looking really good for continuation. If we do break down 140, now things really start to change.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. When is it invalidated? 140?
If we break down this low here, for sure it's invalidated. That's at 118. That would be for sure. But if we may be able to say that it's a high degree of likelihood that it's invalidated. If we break down 154 after this move, then it's starting to look like we're not forming a higher low, and it's starting to become most likely that it's going to invalidate, but it doesn't actually become invalidated until we break down that low as far as I'm concerned. So definitely, let's take a look at some lower time frames real quick. That's good to see. Would want to see this 50 EMA hold as support. That is a very, very critical area, so seeing it line up with horizontal is good to see. Pulling up the 4 hour very quickly. We do see that we just got a death cross, which I was definitely hoping to avoid and was unable to do so. Let's see if we can now draw in a bit of a channel. Okay. So at a minimum, I'm expecting a dead cat bounce here. To 227 based on this channel, and that would be even if that critical support that we were looking at doesn't hold, I would still expect it to provide at least a bounce to 227. Would be very surprised if that doesn't happen. And as I've said, I expect support to hold until it doesn't. We have a big area of support around 180 to 190, which I think is going to have a high degree of probability of reversing this. The most likely outcome from here is for this to be the actual bottom as far as I'm concerned. So at a minimum, I would expect to return to the moving average, the 200, and the top of this channel. And ideally, from there, what I would want to see is a higher low lead to a higher high, which breaks through the trend line, breaks through the channel. So if that happens, right here is where I would be looking to buy, because we would expect for the 200 to kind of act as resistance, and then after we broke through, then turn into support. So this is the most likely outcome from here. It's to make this big of a projection is just kind of an idea that I would be my mind, what my mind sees as the most likely outcome. And if we do reject in here and create a new low, now everything changes. So if we do that, now everything changes. Or if we don't bounce in the way that I thought and proceed to kind of break down this action here. So a lot that I'll be keeping my eye on. The yellow I think is the least likely, but I still give it 30% that somehow we are unable to support the 180 to 190 and break above the 4-hour 200 EMA, which then leads to really getting in danger of breaking down the big W and not turning this into a local low. So I give that yellow maybe a 30% chance, and I'm thinking about a 50% chance of this of these white lines being, first resistance, then support, where you kind of find support there, and then create some sort of it would be maybe some sort of head and inverse shoulder, head, shoulder, break through the channel, and then pull back into a golden cross. This would be a sweet way to reverse this and provide an entry that isn't at the bottom, but it is close and giving very good risk reward, while also not sacrificing strike rate by trying to buy the bottom. So that is what I'm going to be watching for closely, and if we struggle around the 225 area, I'm going to be very much reevaluating. So yeah, that is what I'm seeing out of Ethereum. Looks like we've been going for a little over an hour now and covered everything that I was wanting to talk about. Anything else that you wanted to talk about, or any other questions that you're seeing?
Well, I think we're just going to stick to crypto, right? You should just do a whole other show about the S&P, which I also don't know too much about. I just know everything's crashing. Somebody's asking, can you please do the weekly SAR and BTC? But we already covered that, but maybe this person missed that. The weekly SAR broke, right?
Yep, weekly SAR broke, and...
So maybe you should rewind the stream, Mr. Live, stream it, because SAR did cover it.
Or the point of the show is educational for the most part, opposed to me telling you what I think. As you guys can see, if I'm out of town for a few weeks, how does that affect you? Exactly, and that's something that's important to me. Is I don't when I'm away, it's like I like taking some time away so that you guys see how does it affect you when I'm not doing regular shows. Are you really growing dependent on my analysis? If that's true, then that's a very bad situation. And somebody asking me, where is the weekly SAR in Bitcoin, tells me that this person is probably overly dependent on the analysis that I'm providing, because anybody and everybody can come into indicators on TradingView, search for Lucid SAR, pull it up on a chart, and put it to the weekly time frame, and then just look and see, has it been broken, or is it still intact? It is still intact on Ethereum, US dollar, and it was broken on Bitcoin. Okay.
Yeah, there's no other questions, unless you want to cover all these other altcoins. But
no, I think covering a macro view of altcoins and the Bitcoin dominance is going to be a good place. And yeah, Ethereum is most important to me, so keep an eye on the Bitcoin market cap dominance, and ETH against USD should give us a pretty good idea of what the market is doing in general. And bottom line is, if the Bitcoin market cap dominance is in a bearish setup and ETH against Bitcoin is bearish as well, I don't want to be longing any alts really at all. I want to, again, it's kind of trading with the trend. If the macro trend is that alts are losing value against Bitcoin, then I'm not going to try to find the 1 out of 1,000 that actually is able to beat Bitcoin in that environment. Instead, I'm going to want to be shorting alts against Bitcoin and waiting for that trend to reverse. So yeah, I think that alts are just in an absolutely critical spot, just like Bitcoin, and it's too early to try to catch a falling knife, but it is very important time to be paying attention and being flexible. And if you have a favorite alt, are you able to short it? Is that available to you? If not, finding an alt that you can short can be a good idea, because if you're only ever longing alts, then you're going to miss out on big opportunities to profit when they go down, and you're also going to really affect your bias. It's going to be really hard to be unbiased about market direction if you can only long, or if you're only willing to long. So something to consider is that having the flexibility to both long and short will definitely help to remove bias from which direction the market is going.
Exactly. Well said.
I appreciate it. All right. Well, I guess it's about time to sign off. And yeah, there's been a lot that has happened in the traditional markets recently. I will definitely be doing my best to get a show together for that as soon as I can. Gold and S&P, very big moves lately.
And oil also.
Oil, yeah. I haven't even looked at oil. So yeah.
Oh, you haven't seen it?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you don't know what's going on? Well, geez, it's a massacre. There's an oil war going on, Tyler. It's insane.
Huh. That is very interesting. And this sure looks like a buy to me. Look at that horizontal support.
Oh yeah, maybe this is one of those moments where you actually also have to read the news before.
Yeah, that.
This was a sell the news. Because there's an actual oil war going on since the last couple of days, but together with the whole financial crisis happening right now on all the markets, you might want to just read into it a little bit before you say it's a good buy, because there's a lot of stuff going on that literally opened the oil gates to compete with each other. So the price is just dropping and dropping and dropping, and nobody can do anything about it at this point.
Yeah, that is really interesting. And
of course, it's not going to go to zero, but
very interesting setup. Looks like it could be developing a massive descending triangle. And yeah, anytime I see a big move down like this into a big area of support, it certainly intrigues me from a risk-reward perspective. But seeing a massive descending triangle is very interesting, because how low can the price of oil really go? I mean, if this thing breaks down, that would be a 76% measured move from from 25. So that's that would be calling for a $5 for a barrel of oil. If this breaks down, that would be insane. So very interesting times, and I agree that definitely need to have a very good understanding of any sort of fundamental factors at play here, which I certainly don't, and we'll definitely need to do a show about traditional markets once I get the chance. So thanks for bringing that up. I'll be very interested to see what happens there with oil as well as everything else.
Yeah, it's all very interesting. People are saying that we're a good team. I like that.
I like that too. That's great to hear. And I wish I had a picture of us both to send it off, but I had one that I didn't tweet out that I wanted to share.
Oh, for the stream, the one with the bikes. The one with your neighbor.
That's the one. So
I love that one. Is it live? I cannot see it on the live stream.
It's a little bit laggy, but yeah, it'll be on there.
You're not sharing it because I'm watching it live on my phone.
Yeah, the live will be a little bit behind. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, so how did you like that drink? That was nice, right? Did you drink it with the beer? I think it, yeah.
It just got put in the background. Yes, so.
Yeah, I see it, yeah.
We'll be.
Your neighbor.
We'll be signing off with a cheers of the local beer. I think that was Hertog Jan and
Hertog Jan.
Hertog Jan.
Hertog Jan.
And
we had so many laughs about this. Try it. Hertog Jan.
So yeah, cheers to
everybody. When I pronounce my favorite soccer, maybe not let me pronounce my favorite soccer team. If there's any Dutch people watching, then they might be upset.
Well, so yeah, just a quick sign off. Cheers to everybody. Thanks for listening in. And this was me with my local Dutch beer and a shot of Jenever, which went down very smooth with that beer. So got the full experience of not only the local food and also the local drink. So thanks again for showing me around, showing me such a good time. That really was a whole heck of a lot of fun, and I will hope to get to come see you again sooner rather than later.
It was completely my pleasure. We had such a great time, and I think this stream was really good. I see a lot of good comments in the live stream. People are very happy with your analysis. Of course, you cannot depend on it when you trade, but it might help them to figure it out better for themselves. And hopefully see you soon, Ty. Well, you just arrived back home. I don't know if you have any travels planned, but we'll talk about it later on. I think we've been going for long enough. Let's make it right.
All right. Well, thanks again for joining me. I'm glad to hear that there's some good comments coming in. I agree that I think we made for a great team today. You had some really good questions and brought up some points that I probably would have forgotten to touch on otherwise. So always appreciate everybody for contributing in the chat, asking questions, for liking or disliking, and then also subscribing if you are interested in being notified for whenever I go live. I am trying to do a show about once a week when I'm in town. And we'll maybe be doing a little bit more to get caught up over this next week. So thank you again, Daisy. It's been a pleasure, and we'll plan on catching up with you guys later.
My pleasure. Graag gedaan.
Doei.
Doei. I love that. Doei.